Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Watts, Regional Vice President for Western Governors University. On behalf of WGU, I'm grateful to Philadelphia Magazine for creating this virtual forum to discuss how Philadelphia schools can best serve pre-kindergartners to doctoral candidates. We've heard from educators that recent years have been the most challenging of their careers. Yet these dedicated teachers, professors, and administrators have persisted through a global health crisis and the resulting heightened impact of the digital divide. Through it all, educators have created meaningful learning experiences. So for their tenacity, talent, and passion, I say thank you. At WGU's Teachers College, we support this community of learning by offering accredited, low-cost degree programs for those who want to begin or advance a teaching career, but face barriers in reaching that goal. Our competency-based model enables learners to earn a college degree while continuing to meet work and family responsibilities. WGU has more than 1,000 students in Philadelphia, and to date, more than 2,000 alumni here, many of whom are graduates of the public schools we will discuss today with CCP President Dr. Guy Generals and Philadelphia School Superintendent Dr. William Hite. I'm looking forward to hearing from them. It's now my privilege to introduce Kate Dailey, editor of Philadelphia Magazine. Kate was born and raised in Montgomery County and has helped launch new journalism products across legacy and digital media brands from the BBC to Vox. Kate and her two children live in Chestnut Hill, and she's very happy to once again be working in her hometown.
Thank you, Rebecca and Western Governors University. And thank you to the rest of the sponsors for this event, Bank of America, Penn Medicine, St. Joseph's University, and GoPuff. For the rest of the week, you can join us for these conversations at noon and 4 daily. And if you've missed any sessions, we invite you to check them out at phillymag.com/thinkfest. Now, please join me for my conversation with Dr. Guy Generals, President of the Community College of Philadelphia, and Dr. William Hite, Superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia. Thanks so much for watching. Great. Well, thank you both for being here. Dr. Generals, Dr. Hite, we're really excited to be in person and to be able to talk about some of the issues that are going on in Philadelphia education in general. Now, Dr. Hite, you were in our top 10 of our most influential list this year, which was something that I really pushed for. I'm a Philadelphia school district parent, and I really feel like we are not going to get back to normal. The city can't get back to normal until kids are in schools and parents feel safe and feel like their kids are taken care of. So, how do you feel? Have we reached that benchmark? Are we back?
We are back. I think we're still a long ways from normal, and in as much as we still have to periodically close schools and quarantine groups of students or certain students or classrooms, and in very few cases, some whole schools. We've only had to do that now with 5 schools, thank goodness. And we're still below 1% positivity rates in our test results. But we're trying to do everything to mitigate. And I think the longer we remain in school, the more it feels closer to normal. And the vast majority of our children are back in schools full time. And they are getting used to wearing masks. They're getting used to testing. And now we're requiring vaccines for our student athletes. And that will evolve and grow to be required for performing art students. But I think all of those things will allow us to get back to normal, and we've done and continue to do enormous things around safety and mitigation strategies and make those things available both for our staffs and for our young people.
Dr. Generals, does it feel like you guys are back?
We are back, but only, as Bill indicated, only partially. As I indicated today, we're roughly 50-50, maybe a little less in terms of the numbers of students that are on campus. So a large portion of our students continue to be online. We have a large portion of students that have not been vaccinated. We have a vaccine mandate, so in order for you to come back to the campus, you have to be vaccinated. We've pushed hard. We have testing. We have daily testing here, so students that do come in, if they have exemptions, they can be tested. But right now, about 4,000 students are still online. Many of them want to come back to the campus, but they don't want to do the vaccine, so they have to make decisions about what they want to do. But I think in terms of the activities on the campus, we are coming pretty close to being back to normal. The students if you go to our learning commons, they're studying, they're working hard, they're in the labs, they're in the classrooms, the faculty are in the classrooms teaching. Everyone is adjusted to wearing a mask. So anywhere beyond, as Bill indicated, anywhere in the classrooms or in common areas, you have to wear a mask. Things like our cafeteria is not open yet. Our basketball teams will start playing. Actually, they had their first game this week, so athletics are back. Student activities are
Did
back.
they win?
So that's a good question. Do you know whether they won? They just, yeah, I'm not sure. They had their first game Monday night. We had some issues, some
Great to play
facilities.
in person, yeah.
We had some facilities issues, so I lost track a little bit. But so in terms of what's happening on campus, I'm satisfied that we're moving in the right direction. We're not there. We still have a long ways to go. We start another semester in a couple of weeks, actually. So we'll see about those 4,000 students, whether or not they'll get vaccinated. I don't think anyone anticipated the level of resistance for the vaccine. I certainly did.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the issue right now.
No, and I will say again, as a parent with two kids in the public schools, I've been really pleased with. It has seemed pretty seamless. I'm sure not on your end, but for us, I was anticipating more closures, more quarantines, and I'm really happy that hasn't been the case. And I'm happy that the kids are learning. They're coming home. They're learning about vaccines in class. They're learning about Roy G. Biv and the color wheel, all the stuff that kindergartners and third graders are supposed to learn about. But what are you seeing and what are you hearing about? So they're back in, but obviously the past year played a toll. So how do we play catch up, and where are the areas where we're sort of seeing the biggest effects from a year of virtual school?
Yeah, so it was a great question, Kate, and it allows for me to begin thinking about the types of things that we're seeing between and amongst many of our children, particularly our youngest learners. And one of the things that we saw almost the middle of last year, that our youngest learners were behind where they were the prior year when they were fully in person. They were behind about 14 percentage points on the assessments that we use, particularly in the youngest grades, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Some of our middle school students were about where they were the prior year. And then our high school students, it all depended on just kind of what the course was. But the other thing that we observed is that the thing that was most difficult for most of them was the fact that they were virtual and disconnected with their social support systems. And what I mean by that, friends, teammates, individuals who are on teams or in extracurricular activities. Then when you hear young people say, hey, I left school as a 7th grader and I'm returning now as a 9th grader to a school that I've never been in before. And so part of the adjustments that we had to make this year was really around recreating all of the community types of environments that are so necessary for children to thrive, and the reestablished communities as a part of like the introduction back to school, versus just jumping right into the academic and social and emotional types of things that we all think about. And we also had to do that with many of our educators who were also out for an extended period of time, and in many cases experienced loss of loved ones, colleagues, or friends. And so that became a major part of getting young people back. But the question, we are looking to accelerate where young people are, and we're choosing the term acceleration because that learning was interrupted. It wasn't their fault. Their learning was interrupted. So we're not talking about remediation, we're talking about acceleration and making sure that we are creating additional opportunities, like opportunities to learn beyond the school day, opportunities to learn throughout the summer where we had many more children than we normally have in a summer program. And those things will continue for the next 3.5 years. And in addition, more resources in schools, more behavioral health services in schools, more literacy coaches and math coaches. All of those things are meant to help young people accelerate where they were from a year ago. And then the final thing is the most important part of all of this is for us to have systems so that teachers will know precisely where their young people are. And that is a series of we call them formative assessments. These are not high stakes assessments, and they're not meant to compare and contrast students, but they're meant to inform teachers and parents about where their young people are versus where they should be given their grade.
Dr. Generals, obviously you're working with older students. The setup is obviously much different than kind of, a traditional K through 12 education, but are you seeing, I guess, what are you seeing as these kids are getting back to what this new normal is?
So, first of all, let me say that we have a fairly large dual enrollment program. So a lot of my students are his students, and they're going through everything that Bill just described, we are seeing. I think you can't underestimate the social impact of having been online for an entire 18 months. Everything we know about education and learning and maturity and development has to do with not just what's on the page of a book or the screen of a computer, but the interaction with your peers, with your teachers, your mentors. Especially at the college level, students are trying to identify where they want to go, who they want to be, and it's so critically important to have the kind of face-to-face interaction, or in-person interaction, I should say, with an advisor, with a coach, with a mentor. I know there's been a lot said about the younger students and what they're missing, but I'd like to advocate for those adolescents. When you're 12, 13, that's a critically important developmental stage in your life. And to be locked in your bedroom and only having instruction come at you through a computer, and then beyond that, you're either watching television or you're on. I have a 13-year-old, so I know this scene very well. Or you're on your iPhone. I think there's so much missing, both in terms of the social interaction, the athletics, the music programs, and you can't recapture that. I mean, you might be able to remediate it a little bit, but that period in your life. The things you can talk about with a counselor that you can't talk about with your father, sexual development and things of that sort are critically important, and I think that was lost. And then the other thing is, while we were able to provide the resources, we gave out probably 2,000 or more computers. Even, I'm speaking to the equity gap, because there's a lot of students that just didn't have the technologies. So we were able to do that. We made arrangements with Comcast Essential Wi-Fi. There's still a disadvantage in the learning environment. When you're 19 years old, trying to follow through on a math lecture, and you've got your younger brothers and sisters running around, or you're crowded in a bedroom, and so there is an equity thing that I'm really concerned about, that I think will impact students. Primarily students of color, primarily students with disadvantaged backgrounds. And that begins to play out here at the college. Coming out of high school, they may need more developmental work. They need, they need to make up what they really didn't get over the last 18 months. So it's still early yet. We're beginning to see some of the beginnings of that. But as Bill have said, we've received a lot of federal support to build out, to expand, to augment both instruction as well as developmental needs, mental health needs, not just for the students, but for our faculty and staff as well, because they also suffered. Everybody had to endure 18 months of isolation.
Yeah.
And so,
I think Guy makes a very good point. I want to build on that too, because I think that is the one thing that came out of this experience in COVID, and that it displayed in full view the inequities that normally exist and that we don't all see.
Right.
And to his point, the 4,000 computers that they had to provide, and that number was over 100,000 for us. And in addition to that, we had to distribute some 11 million meals during that period of time, or young people would not have had access to food or nutrition. And so I do think that it brought front and center the inequities, and as a byproduct of that, we were able to do things in a very short period of time that without COVID, we would have never been able to do, and that is to provide young people with the resources and access to things that they may not have had access to.
Yeah,
before.
and I'm curious, a lot of what you said was kind of like wartime decision making. There was all this federal money coming in. What specifically did it allow you to do that was started because of COVID, but maybe will be something effective that you can do going forward regardless?
Yeah, for us, it is how we think about the behavioral health services that are provided for young people, and we're using almost a third of the monies to focus on the social aspect and the emotional aspects, as Guy just described, having an adolescent. We're also focused. We also will continue. We are now a one-to-one district. What does that mean? That means that every child who comes into the school district of Philadelphia will get a technology device, and it will be a Chromebook or a computer and so we now want to take advantage of that because it does provide some advantages for young people to access different types of courses or different types of learning materials or practices that they weren't able to do before. The other thing is how we use time and thinking about the constraints that time has always created for us, trying to squeeze an educational day into like a 7-hour, 30-minute window, although someone may have, as Guy pointed out earlier, they may have children to take care of, or they may be the caretaker for the family, and it doesn't work within that day. And so we could think very differently now about how to do those types of things. And then the other thing I would say is that there was a personalization or personalized learning that occurred in some respects. For some children, that worked. Not for all, but some, that really worked. And we have to think what made that work and what were the things that were eliminated for those young people that existed in schools that we can now remove. And so all of those things are likely to continue. We still do meal distributions now, even though our children are back. We still have now children using technology, even though they're back. And we're still providing them with the social and emotional supports, even though they're back with their teachers.
How about you? What's happening here at the community college that you want to see?
Yeah, I think the technologies have allowed us to augment what we do. We have this ongoing discussion whether it can supplant, whether we need, physical buildings when we've done this online. And my answer to that is no. But what it can do is augment the reality.
Absolutely.
So teaching can occur literally 24/7 now. And you don't necessarily need a live teacher. You can go online, you can go into your portal, you can get a video of that teacher. If you have kids and 1 o'clock at night is the only time you can study, which was my case going through my educational experience, you can now do that. And so we've enhanced how you deliver online instruction and virtual instruction. We've augmented support services, counseling, advising. We were doing none of that before COVID. And it was wartime. I mean, March 13, 2020, the world ended as we knew it. And we had it flip in like 5 days almost. So counseling, advising, you can't understate the importance of the mental health. People that were previously isolated can now go online and can get support from a counselor or an advisor. Registration is a key part. Enrollment services are now online. So we literally are in the transition from purely virtual to face-to-face, and we're finding a lot of positive attributes that the technologies have provided us. And like Bill said, we're now, I talked probably 3 years about having a requirement that every student have a laptop, and got pushed back. Now every student has a laptop, and we'll never go back.
That's right.
Otherwise, so it's those types of things that we're taking advantage. And then finally, I'll say the workspace. We're having discussions about whether or not some of our back-end services, payroll, and I shouldn't say this too publicly, but there are certain areas of the college that don't necessarily need an office on campus.
Right.
And to the extent that we can come to some common agreement about who those people are, and what services can be done from home on a regular basis or working from home. That's a large part of the conversation, not just here, but throughout higher education. We've learned that there are some areas, some support, some workforce needs. We have to maintain equity because the people that have to be here are largely, the Philadelphians, the people of color. But there are positions here that don't necessarily have to be on campus, and we've learned that, and the services are just as good, if not better. So we're making some adjustments and transitions there as well.
When we put this panel together, we called it, I think we called it From Pre-K to PhD, Education in Philadelphia. I'm an English major. I like the alliteration, but I realize that that's sort of a reductive way of looking at educational options in the school system, and that there needs to be several different kind of paths for success when it comes to education, when it comes to training. I know you know, the school district and the community college are working together. Can you guys talk to me a little bit about what are some of the pathways for students if they start, you know, as a 5-year-old in the Philadelphia school system, going through the community college? What are the sort of the pathways for success or the routes to, you know, a successful career or a successful future? What do you have now and what do you hope to build?
I'll let you start.
So, you know, certainly higher education, as we know, is changing. We are beginning to move away from the notion that vocational education is for those who couldn't go to higher education. And the world is recognizing that we are at a serious economic disadvantage if we don't encourage and prepare a generation of people that are willing to go into advanced manufacturing, that are willing to go into, you know, the technical fields, that are willing to go into some of the biotherapeutic fields, all of which are under that broad umbrella of, I don't like to use the term vocational, because even the federal government, the Perkins grant, the federal government has changed it. It's career technical education.
Right.
So specifically to us, we are right now building a 70,000 square foot Career Advanced Technology Center out in West Philadelphia that will include advanced manufacturing. It will include auto technology, which, let me be clear, it's almost a misnomer to refer to it, because we know that cars are computers on wheels now. So the level of technology and the level of knowledge, it's all clean energy. We're moving into the areas of clean energy, alternative fuels. And so these are real job opportunities. We know, you know, all the research has shown that all jobs by 2025, roughly 60 to 70% of all the jobs will require some level of post-secondary education. Not everybody's going to be an English major. Not everybody's going to go into graduate school. So huge amounts of those will require some type of career and or technical education. And so we're partnering with the school district to foster that pipeline, to encourage. The big problem is encouraging parents to realize that there is a viable field of study if you want to study electronics, or if you want to study you know, megatronics, or advanced, you know, some area of advanced technology. And many of those fields in higher ed, what we do is we stack the credentials, so you can get a short-term certificate in welding or auto technology, and you can stack those credentials right up through a pre-engineering and an engineering degree, and, you know, ultimately into, you know, a higher ed field.
Yeah.
So I chuckle as you were asking the question, because Guy and I usually refer to this as almost a K-16 model.
Right.
And if we thought about it more from that perspective, we would think about it more holistically than just the K-12 and higher ed and then post-secondary education. Right. But if we just thought about it on the continuum as K-16, then we're encompassing the fact that regardless of what young people leave high schools with, they're going to need some post-secondary training in something, right, in order to be competitive in this knowledge, the knowledge economy. And so naturally, we're doing a lot of the work at the high school level to engage children with experiences. And I'd actually rather them have their high school experience with the community college, and because that then creates pathways that those young people have, where they have identified an interest. But I do think at the earlier grades, we also have to do a much better job of creating awareness of the types of opportunities that are available. And there is an awareness, to Guy's point, among families of the Mastermans and Centrals of the world. But it's not necessarily awareness so much so about the biotechnology that he just talked about, megatronics, advanced manufacturing, the first in a nation solar installation program that now is in the school district of Philadelphia at Frankfurt High School. I think we could do more of creating an awareness, particularly among our youngest students. Guy talked about an adolescent. I have a grandson. He's 9 years old. He loves big buildings, and he wants to know, how do I help create and make these big buildings. And so that's more than just like his content areas. At some point, he's going to have to apply. He's going to have applied experiences in that area of interest. And I think that's what we have to do more of with our families. We are now taking all third graders to visit college campuses. I also think we should now begin taking all third graders to visit like occupations where there may be an interest down the road, or at the very least, a need for more individuals to learn those skills. And so we've been working a lot to do that, but I think if we thought about it more as a continuum, then it is easier to create the pathways, regardless of what children
And
are in.
it's important to realize that because you want to go into one of these career fields, mechatronics or auto tech, doesn't mean that you don't learn mathematics
Right.
and English and
Right.
science and physics.
That's
If
right.
you want to be a welder, you need to know about energy and heat and the physics that
That's
go
right.
into melding materials. And that's so it really, the approach is to make it more interdisciplinary. So you're not just learning a particular skill, you're still educating yourself in the broad field of subject matters that encompass K-16.
Or becomes a means for teaching
Right.
physics.
Right, exactly, right.
There's a lot of talk, and we cover a lot the sort of emerging biotech scene here in the city, and they're rebuilding the bud plant to bring back manufacturing. A lot of talk about the need for lab techs and those types of workers. So what kind of interaction are you guys having with the business community about what the needs are, and what kind of support do you need from them to help make this more of a reality?
So just this week, we had a 3-hour meeting with Bushi down in the Navy Yard, where they, which you should have been in that meeting, because they said the very thing, like
Yes.
biotechnology, biotherapeutics. It's a huge field. The idea that Philadelphia is going to become Silicon Valley is very much a reality down in the Navy Yard. So we met with them to talk about not only associate degree level candidates for jobs there, but also certificate programs, internship programs. They have a real need to broaden their bench strength in these fields, because they're finding people with graduate degrees in biology that they can't keep them, and so they're constantly turning. So there's a real practical need that they have, and they see the community college and the school district, that pipeline fulfilling that need. So that's with Wuxi. We also we started a program with Ivance, where we customized 2 biology courses for our students to go through these courses and then go to an internship and then ultimately work with them. We just started that. This is the first semester, and we got about 6 students that have voiced an interest. So it's not just students who want to go into the high physical life sciences. They're saying these are students that can be trained for a particular job. I think if they're trained for that job, they'll eventually get an interest in the life science, because it's fascinating. If you have anybody in your family that's got cancer or some kind of disease, you can see the connection between what you're doing and saving their lives. And then finally, I'll mention that we have a long-standing relationship with the Wistar Institute, which enables students to get into the life science. But what I find most fascinating about that program is most of the students who went in there were not biology or chemistry students. These were students who had to take biology or chemistry as a general education course. And through that course, they fell in love. They saw a flyer on the wall, and they followed through because it's a paid internship. They got the training that they need, and many of those students have gone to work for these companies that we're talking about, but many more have gone on to graduate school, to medical school, and so forth. So I think it's a field that we're becoming more engaged in and more involved in, and I think we're establishing a nice portfolio of partnerships with the industries that are moving into the city. And I think once we, credibility is everything. Once we become a credible partner for the industry, I think that's only going to bode well for not just the college, but the students who will ultimately be able to take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah, and I think that part of becoming a credible partner is also equipping our young people or our students with what's needed in order to be successful in whatever that industry is. And I think that also requires industry to talk about and be concise and clear around the competencies and skills that are necessary. And we have to get much better at like teaching children to problem solve and to think critically and to think about how they can apply the content area in the applied area to physics or biology or the other way around. And so we are in a lot of meetings together making that case. And so you can no longer say, like, students can't do math. You have to talk about the type of math that's needed, so then we can create the structures in order to provide those young people with whatever that is.
That's great. Wonderful. Well, I know we're running out of time. Dr. Hite, before we go, you are moving on after a successful tenure in the school district here, and I just want to know, what is your wish for the school district going forward? What is, if you were able to kind of gift them with if you had one kind of magic wand on your way out the door, what is sort of your wish for the school district, and what would you like to see?
Yeah, my one wish for the school district of Philadelphia is for individuals to just see and recognize education as a path to address all of the things or ills that in many cases we're experiencing now. It's a path out of poverty, it's a path to employment, it's a path to individuals coming back to be contributing members of the city and their neighborhoods and in their communities. And I do think that we have to, if there's a more broad-based ownership and responsibility to ensuring that every single child has everything they need, no matter where they live in the city, then that would be my wish, that everyone owns that. It's not just the school district's responsibility or those parents who are choosing to send their children to the school district of Philadelphia. It's everyone who lives in Philadelphia's responsibility to ensure that young people have what they need, regardless of where they are.
That's great. Wonderful. Well, gentlemen, thank you both so much for
Thank
speaking
you.
with me.
Thank you.
Great.
Keep up the good work. I'm so glad the schools are open. I'm so glad the kids are getting the resources that they need. And I hope we can chat again soon.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Thank you.